What's the easiest way for you to hit your high protein diet protein goals? Now, you might be in a situation where you are new to nutrition. Maybe you're new to this kind of evidence-based way of managing your nutrition. You've kind of come from fad diets and things like that. You've heard about calorie deficit, you've heard about maintenance, you've even heard about high protein diet and there being some benefit to all of this. But when it actually comes to increasing your protein intake, you've had a look at your diet as it exists right now. Maybe you've even tracked it in MyFitnessPal. And at that point you said, right, I don't eat much fucking protein whatsoever. How the fuck am I going to increase this? And then you think, well, this just feels too difficult. And then you're on the borderline of throwing this whole high protein diet thing out of the window and moving on to something else. Now, reality is your protein intake doesn't have to be hugely high if your goal is just fat loss. If you have a specific goal for retaining muscle, for building muscle, then yes, you might want to have some more specific look at your protein intake. Again, we've covered those ranges multiple times on the podcast. I won't go through those again. But if you're just looking at fat loss, let's say, then your requirements are generally speaking a lot lower. So the thing is, when you're looking at changing the amount of protein that you have in your diet, then there really comes down to this is going to sound really, I don't know what the right word is. It's going to sound really annoying that I'm going to make it sound this simple, but I'm going to give you some practical tips off the back of it. So I feel like I can get away with giving this very flippant answer, let's say. There are two ways for you to increase the protein content of your diet. Number one, eat more. Number two, drink more. That's it. That's all you got to think about. How do I eat more protein? How do I drink more protein? If that is the thing that you want to do, you want to increase your protein intake, then absolutely go ahead and do it. But before we get onto that, I'm going to say there is going to be somebody out there, whether they comment on an Instagram post, maybe they comment on a tweet, maybe they comment on a YouTube video, then, only then, they are going to say, but I saw What the Health and they only said you need 0.8 grams per kilo, so we have too high a protein diet in the West anyway. Fuck off, son. Because we all know, well, we don't all know, otherwise you wouldn't have said that. I'll rephrase. We know from specific research into protein intake that the recommendations of 0.8 grams are there to avoid disease. So there are certain diseases that you will see that are prevalent where 0.8 grams per kilo is not being met. So whether that's chronically below that level, we see diseases related to protein deficiencies. That's why the minimum recommendation is at that point. But most people on planet Earth have more important goals, let's say, or they have more desire to have better nutrition than to just avoid disease. They want to do better than that, whether they want to build muscle because that is going to potentially help them in later years with age-related sarcopenia and avoiding all of that sort of stuff, or maybe they just want to look jacked, or maybe they just want to look how they want to look and that involves building some muscle, or maybe it's just a case of being slightly higher in protein helps them feel more full, which helps them stick to a calorie deficit, which helps them to achieve their weight loss goals. All these different sorts of things. We're kind of past that stage where What the Health is seen as this some sort of fucking miracle mecca bible of nutritional information, and we all know that it's utter horseshit. So if you are thinking about putting a comment on YouTube, putting a comment into Instagram or wherever, don't, because what's the fucking point, really? Anyway, back to what we're talking about in this particular episode of the show. So the first step, I would go down of three different steps. I'm going to take through three different steps here. So the first step to increasing protein in your diet is to basically know what high protein sources are. Now, a lot of people, that might seem really simple. You know what kind of got high protein in it and what hasn't. But for some people, they fucking don't. Now, I've come across people who are in the nutrition industry giving advice to other people that would say spinach is a good fucking source of protein. Let's be honest, it's fucking not, is it? Now, you'll get the argument that oh, this food has more grams of protein per calorie than steak or meat. Now that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean fuck all in terms of a practical recommendation, because let's look at that scenario. This is why we look at protein per gram, not protein per calorie. So if, for example, I haven't got the numbers with me off the top of my head because I'm not a geek like that, but let's say, for example, broccoli has got X amount of protein and that's so much more per calorie than steak. Now, to get the same amount of protein from some spinach as you would from a piece of steak, you are going to have to eat a fucking metric ton of spinach, and a gargantuan amount that's not really going to be feasible for you to do in a day. Plus, it's going to be an incomplete protein. It's not going to contain all the essential amino acids and so on and so forth. There's issues with that as well. So spinach is not a protein source. I'd also say things like nuts are not necessarily a good protein source either. It's mainly a source of fat. It has got protein in it, yes, but as a source of protein, maybe there are other things that you can look at. So you would want to look at, you've got some vegetarian things, like you've got dairy. Dairy is, generally speaking, going to be high in protein. Obviously, some dairy is going to be high in fat as well, so you may want to consider that when it comes to trying to fit it into your calorie requirements. But things like milk, eggs, those sorts of things have got a lot of protein in them. If you are a vegan, maybe you want to look at tofu. You might want to look at seitan. I always like that because it sounds like Satan, the devil. And let's be honest, certain vegan people are Satan. Jokes, vegans, jokes. Take a joke. Anyway, you've also got meats, you've got fish, you've got even protein powders, whether they be vegan or non-vegan. You've got protein bars and various different supplements. So there's a whole raft of different protein, high protein foods that you could have. So first step is knowing what those protein foods and drinks and things are. Where are you going to get all of your sources from? Then you might want to go through that and say, okay, which one of these protein sources do I like? You know, which ones do I have in my habitual diet anyway? And therefore you could just increase the amount of. So that's the first step, is making sure you understand what foods are genuinely high in protein and going to have an impact on helping you achieve your protein target. Step 2 then is to review what you actually eat right now. So look at your diet and look at specifically the protein content within your meals and your snacks. Now, most people that I come across generally have protein in their lunch meals, protein in their dinner meals. If they're training, they probably have some sort of post-workout shake, but it's usually breakfast where the most opportunity exists to increase protein intake. So if that's you and you have a very low protein breakfast, then maybe look to increase that by, you could do something as super simple as having a protein shake with your breakfast. You could also put a scoop of protein powder into your oats. Again, the real super simple, doesn't require much preparation, much even thinking about. It's really straightforward to do. If you've got some extra time, you could do something with eggs, you could have yogurt with some fruit in it and stuff like that. Again, there's lots of different options out there. You've just got to then refer back to that list and then say, okay, which one of these makes sense for a higher protein breakfast? You might have smoked salmon and scrambled eggs. There you go, have a posh breakfast like that. Or you might, as I say, have a protein shake with your kind of breakfast as you have it right now. Or you could do what I do. Sometimes I have cereal and then I have the protein shake as the milk of the cereal, and then it's like this chocolatey goodness. Beautiful. Step 3 then is to look at where you can add protein in. So you've looked at your protein sources, you've got that bit figured out. Now you've looked at where your specific meals are slightly lower in protein and you've kind of started to adjust those and bring some of the low protein meals up a little bit. Now you're looking at, okay, where could I logically slot some additional protein into my diet? Now, obviously, pre and post workout is an obvious one. So maybe if you're not having anything pre and post workout, that might be quite easy. Again, protein shakes are very convenient. This is where a protein shake becomes useful because it's not necessarily a magical ingredient, but it does help with just trying to supplement your existing diet with added high protein. It's probably not going to have many carbs, not much fat, so you don't really have to think about it from taking a huge amount of calories away from your daily diet, but you are going to hit those protein requirements. Think about snacks, think about pre-bed as well. There's some advantages to having protein late at night, or not late-ish at night, I would say, but pre-bed, certainly. So those things are where you would start to tweak things and adjust things. Now, my top tip for you would be to don't feel like you have to change your entire diet overnight to just miraculously now having a shit ton of protein in your diet. If you're starting to make these lifestyle changes, it might take you a while to figure out, okay, what's the right tweak and adjustment to my diet that is going to fit my lifestyle, that's not going to feel like it's completely alien. It's not going to feel like I'm actually turning my world upside down and redoing all the foods that I like to eat just so that I can have a little bit more protein in. That might be a gradual process. So think about adding in like 20 grams of protein. Just start there. So look at your diet, look at all of those things I just took you through, those different steps, and say, well, how can I add 20 grams of protein into my diet? That might be 10 grams extra at breakfast. It might be, 20 grams post-workout. Just have a play around and see where you can slot in 20 grams of protein. Start there and then build up and up and up. Don't feel like you have to do 100 grams of protein extra in your diet overnight. And then start to think about how that's all going to work. Once you've got that in place, once you've got that embedded, then start again. Okay, if you need another 20 grams of protein, let's say, to hit your target, think about how you can squeeze that in as well. You can also build up a bank of high protein recipes. Now, this is something that I do for my online clients. What I do is I give them a full database that's got well over now, probably coming up to 400 different recipes in it. Now, what I do is I list out the recipes, I list out the calories, the protein, the carbs, and the fat. Now, in that spreadsheet, then they can filter on the high protein food. So they can say, list this by highest protein food to lowest protein recipe. Then that gives them a lot of recipes to choose from for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that they know will help them hit their protein targets. So once you find a recipe online or something like that you enjoy, make a note of it. Then you can kind of come back to this bank of recipes. I also give my clients recipe books as well, so they can look through and find different high protein recipes. I also give them a sample meal plan. So when they join the program, when they start coaching with me, is what I do for them is set their targets for the calories, their protein, and depending on their goal, maybe macros as well, but not usually. Then we look at, okay, right, let's say your name is Sue. Sue, you're my client. Now, I would then give Sue a particular meal plan. Now, I don't prescribe meal plans to say this is what you're going to eat for the rest of your life, because that's fucking stupid. You need to be educated so that you can do that stuff for yourself. But I do think it's useful and I do think it's helpful to have a couple of meal plans laid out for you to say, right, this is your goal, this is your calorie targets, protein targets, and this is how you could achieve it with the foods that you enjoy and the foods you love. So I will make 2 sample meal plans for that person. Now, clearly they could follow those if they wanted to, but the idea is they use that as a base to start tweaking and adjusting, adding in new recipes that they like, adding in different foods and all those sorts of things. So they can keep that varied diet and use that as a base, but they are able to tweak and adjust from there. But I would always show them how to get the right amount of protein for their goal into that meal plan so they have something to work with. So again, it might be a case of you start with your own meal plan, and again, you tweak, you adjust, you add things, and you make things work for you. So the key thing here is I would say is start to layer your nutrition. Don't think that you have to make every single change from day one. You don't have to do everything at once. Start to build with the basics. Once you've got the calories in place, once you've got protein in place, you're building up from there. And when it comes to protein, don't feel like you have to, again, turn everything upside down to make your lifestyle now fit a slightly more higher protein intake. Think about it in logical steps. You need to eat more, you need to drink more. So how can you start to eat more protein, drink more protein? Maybe it is you take one meal at a time and start to tweak and adjust that. Maybe it is you look at your pre and post workout nutrition and you put some protein shakes in there just as a convenient way to increase your protein intake. Again, make logical decisions that feel easy. You are trying to make this process feel super simple rather than make it a complete mindfuck. So take the pressure off yourself. Think about building, think about going in stages. You don't have to do everything by a week next Tuesday. You have got many weeks and months to sort this out. And when you actually think about it in a logical fashion and you do things in a methodical way, then I guarantee you'll be delivering more sustainable results in the future. So I hope that gave you a nice summary about how to go from where you are now to maybe hitting a slightly higher protein target in the future.